Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk about why Dark Souls is so important to me. Now that may sound stupid, because it kind of is, but but it's also true. Um, so I first played Dark Souls many years after it came out. Um, I was in high school. My friend invited me over, and we played some games at his house. And at the end of the evening, he let me play Dark Souls on his Xbox, and we had a great time doing that as a group. You know, he already knew the game and I didn't at all, and so he would like sit there and laugh every time I screwed up and died. It's very fun. Um, and during that first game, I got all the way to Sen's Fortress, and holy crap, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept wanting to play the game again for years. I didn't really get another chance until about a year later, after I'd left high school. I had my own laptop. I got the Steam version of the game, and my laptop was not up to spec. I ran the game at 12 frames per second, and I beat the entire game that way 3 times. That was how I played Dark Souls for like 2 years, because I was just, that's what I had access to. When I finally got a computer that could run the game properly, I got to play it properly, and ever since, every couple of weeks, I go back to it again, and I play through it again. I've even done challenge runs with it on Twitch before. You know, and it's fun. It's a really, really great game with a really incredible, like, sense of control that I didn't realize was possible. Until I played this game. Now, there's a lot of different elements that combine to make it great. I've said before in other videos, I don't know what order these things will go up in, but I've got a series of videos where I compare the various games in the franchise to each other and point out the differences in their execution of the formula. That'll probably go up after this, honestly, but Dark Souls takes a lot from the industry, right? It takes stamina management from Monster Hunter. It takes its level layout from Metroid. It takes, you know, the basic third-person combat from Ocarina. But it adds its own stuff, right? It tweaks and expands, you know. And, you know, because it turns that Metroid layout into a full 3D environment. It enhances that third-person combat to the point where it could carry a game on its own without any level design or anything, just interesting enemies and that combat system. And it's really impressive, honestly. And because they take these design elements that were already good and revolutionary, and then they push them way too far, right? Like, as far as they can go with it. Because of that, the design of Dark Souls is just incredibly good. Like, you start with a solid foundation, and you build on it and you build on it. And they keep adding unique things that make the game better than it otherwise would be, right? It would have been very easy for Demon Souls to have the same death mechanic as Kingsfield. No one would have questioned them for it. But it doesn't. It has its own unique mechanic that completely changed the way the industry approaches death, which is insane. Because, life and death mechanics haven't changed a lot over the years. Right up until Dark Souls got popular, there were like 3 ways that every game in the industry handled dying. You either had a lives system, where you got to retry until you ran out of lives, and then you had a game over and you had to retry from a further back point. Or you had a save system where every time you die, you go back to your last save. Or you had autosave checkpoints where every time you die, you go back to the last autosave checkpoint. And that was basically it. Those were the ways you could do it. And Demon Souls and later Dark Souls just completely rewrote that by saying, hey, yeah, there are checkpoints and you go back to them, but you don't reset exactly as you were. You reset differently each time. And there's an incentive to go back to where you were because that's where all of your souls are. And you need those for levels and items and upgrades and everything. They are essential. Right? And this is another unique mechanic because unifying EXP and currency into one thing is something I'd never seen in another game before. It's of course become very popular since then because it makes the death mechanic work really well, but and it's a really good death mechanic. I really like that is a thing that exists in the industry now because it's so much better than just loading from a save or inputting a password, which is just the poor man's save system. And of course lives are stupid. Everyone has been saying for years that lives are an outdated system. And so now that we have something that, punishes the player and makes sure that they aren't wasting huge amounts of time or losing all of their progress, it's great. It's perfect. Because before, when you have a save system, right, if you can only save at specific points in the game, like in Metroid, then you'll end up, you could end up dying 2 feet away from the next save point and then just have to redo all of that stuff. And you don't get any advantage. You haven't picked up any new weapons or anything because everything gets reset. So it can be very frustrating to have to reset like that to get an auto game over. And lives were a slightly more generous way to do that, where you could, restart at smaller points until you run out of lives. But this is so much better because if you pick up an item, you keep that item even after you die. The only thing you lose are your souls and in Demon Souls you also lose some health, but but that means you have an incentive to go back, but you're not punished, right? If you don't want to go back in that direction, you don't have to. You can go explore somewhere else for a while. And that's really cool. It's a really great design that has allowed a lot of other games to improve the way they're perceived by the world because they implement this design. That's a great thing for the industry. I love it. And that's just one small thing on the list of innovations the series has made, right? You know, like there's also a huge emphasis on organic storytelling, right? There's no cut scenes really. I mean, there's one at the beginning and one at the end, and one when you kill Priscilla. There's one when you fight Seath the second time. I mean, I guess most bosses have an intro cutscene, but nothing like happens during that scene. I pointed out the one with Seath because it shows you the crystal, and so that's some relevant information that you need to have for the fight. But most of them are just like, oh, the boss swoops down, and now he's here, and rawr. But there's no like talky scenes where people explain the plot, you know? And that's really important because instead of doing that, characters can explain the plot through, dialogue with NPCs, and you can have it explained through item descriptions and just like world details. And that's a lot harder. Like, it requires a lot more work to do all of that in the show don't tell format. But it means that they can tell the story in a way that's non-invasive, where they put the gameplay first and foremost and let players engage with the story at the rate that they choose. And that means that you'll never lose players because there's not enough world depth, right? Because players who want to explore and find all of the cool shit can. And you'll never lose players because the story is too overbearing and shoving out gameplay moments, because it doesn't do that. And like, it's a really great middle ground that allows the audience to enjoy both the game and the story however they choose. And that's awesome. And that's a thing that most games don't do. Most games that have a story, the story is built into everything, and there's no real way to get around it. Like, think about like Pokemon, right? Like, you start out in this area, and then you go to this area, then you go to this area, and all of the battling is basically just an excuse for you to get to the next spot where you can mash A through the dialogue options until you get to the end. And then you've got nothing left to do except catch them all, I guess, if you want, or just turn the game off and go play something else. Whereas with this new method, you don't have to be railroaded through, a straight setup. You can leave story hints in, like with the Pokemon, you could use Pokedex entries and item descriptions and, random NPCs around the world talking about things only when you ask them about it, and so forth. And you could just have like an open experience where you just wander around the map and do things at your own pace. Sure, you've got that overarching goal of completing the gyms and getting your spot at the top, but like, they could easily have sub-stories that are told organically and subtly. And every series could benefit from that kind of storytelling. It fits very well within the medium of video games, and I like it. I like when a game comes along and does something innovative that can change the landscape of gaming and make it, possible for other developers and designers to do new things with the medium. things we never thought of doing before because it took someone who was kind of an outsider to step in and be like, hey, let's try this, you know? And that's really important. And once a successful game has tried something, it proves that it's possible and that people will like it and that other games can use it in some way. And that's awesome. I like when that happens. I like when we can look at, a new design concept and really build it out and really make something incredible with it. And in a lot of ways, Dark Souls is the game that builds stuff out and makes something incredible with it. Like I said, it takes the level design from Metroid, and it takes the stamina management and the big monster fights from Monster Hunter. And, and the reason it's able to do that kind of stuff, the reason it's able to succeed in that way, is because, because they had such a solid foundation. Because they understood what it was to make a good game and to build on design principles of good games. A lot of people don't really talk about FromSoft's history beyond mentioning that Kingsfield is a thing that exists and that Armored Core is a thing that exists. And I'm not like an expert on this subject, but I will say they've made lots of other games besides those two series, and some that even ran alongside them. One of my favorite games that FromSoft ever made was the Lost Kingdoms series. There are two games, both for the GameCube, and they're really good. Like it really shows their style, because the gameplay is a little bit jank and the menu system is very jank, and there's a general wonkiness to certain aspects of the balance, but the core design is so good and the gameplay loop is so compelling, and the story is just it's just a story. It's not like the greatest thing ever, but it's there and it's good. And the game is just good. But it pulls you in and makes you want to finish it. And seeing how they've and comparing Lost Kingdoms to Dark Souls is ridiculous. Obviously, they have completely different mechanics, but the design philosophies are still there, right? There's a lot of the same core principles of making a game that's rewarding because it challenges you, but not going out of your way to be hard like a dumbass. And there's a lot of just weird subtle things that you wouldn't expect to be there that just kind of elevate the game in ways that are hard to explain. There's a mini game, more like a side quest, where you collect these little red fairies around the maps, and doing so gives you prizes. Now, that's a pretty standard mechanic and not a very interesting one on its own, but the way it weaves into the game is cute and compelling, and I don't know, it just makes you want to play more so you can find them all. And it's simple and it's not unique, but it's fun, and that's what games are for. Right? Dark Souls is a very compelling game for a lot of the same reasons, right? Like, the story of Dark Souls isn't like groundbreaking, it's a dying world lost to the follies of man because greed and ambition and blah 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 blah. Who cares, you know? Um, and and the setting isn't that unique either. It's medieval times, Dark World edition. It's whatever. Um, and and that's fine, right? But it also works really well. Like, I couldn't imagine Dark Souls with a different setting, you know? Like, there have been some attempts. Code Vein is probably the best one that I've played, but it's still kind of weird. And it's not as compelling, right? Like, I have no problem putting down Code Vein and not picking it up again for weeks. But, there's not a day that goes by where I'm not like, man, I kind of want to play Dark Souls again. And that's crazy to me because it's not nostalgia. I picked up the game for the first time like 7, 8 years ago, something like that. There are tons of games I've been playing much longer and have much more like nostalgic attachment to. I've been playing Metroid and Zelda since I was like 7. And so to me, the fact that this game is able to stand up and be like my go-to example of a good game kind of shows that it has something special beyond just being in the right place at the right time. The fact is that Dark Souls has a rich, vibrant world that sucks you in. And the way you explore that world is, well, it's kind of unique. Like, building a Metroidvania level design for a 3D game isn't hard. It's really not. Here's a quick rundown on how you do it. All right. So you take a cylinder and you divide that cylinder into sections, horizontal slices, right? Say 5 slices. And you separate those a little bit, and then you put subdivisions in those slices, right? So now you've got 5 slightly smaller cylinders, and you split them into 3 parts each, okay? And then you draw lines between the sections that you want to connect. Make sure that every section connects to at least 2 others, and that every section has a connection that goes to a different level than the one it's currently on. That's it. That's all you have to do. And make sure that there's a clear, like, path from one end to the other. There's not a break halfway through where, and that's it. That's your level design. Bada bing, bada boom. You can represent the changes between levels with elevators or stairs or pits or ramps or anything. And you can represent the changes amongst the same level with, smaller sections of ramp or just like a straight tunnel or an open area you have to cross to get from one section to another. Like, anything, really. And the sections can be whatever you want. They can be sewers and volcanoes and cities and, whatever. I mean, Dark Souls includes a swamp, a lava area, a sewer, a city, a church, a tower full of traps, 2 different sections of forest. Like, you can mix and match shit as much as you want. And you can even have some sections that are, isolated relatively. Like Ash Lake and the Great Hollow only connect, at the very end, right? There's nothing else that leads to Ash Lake besides the Great Hollow. And the Great Hollow is only connected to Ash Lake and Blighttown. And so, you can have areas like that are slightly isolated, secret. As long as you do have one consistent route, at least one consistent route. You can have 2 or 3, right? Because, for example, if you want to get into Blighttown from anywhere else in the game, right? Let's say you're in the parish. All right, you're in the parish, you want to get to Blighttown. How do you do it? Okay, well, you could run through the forest down into the basin, across the Valley of Drakes, and then you're in Blighttown. Or you could take the elevator down to Firelink, take the stairs down from Firelink into New Londo, walk across the Valley of Drakes from New Londo, and then boom, you're in Blighttown. Or you could go through the Undead Burg, take one of the 2 entrances into the lower Undead Burg, head down to the depths, and get to the end of the depths, then you're in Blighttown. Or you could take the elevator down into Firelink Shrine, then go into the depths through that shortcut, and then go all the way through the depths, and then boom, you're at Firelink Shrine. Or at Blighttown, I mean. And so that's 4 different ways to traverse the world from, from one area to another without teleporting, which you do eventually unlock, so that's 5 ways. And that's really cool, right? Like the fact that you can do that, and you can take 5 different paths that lead from A to B, and some of them pass through some of the same places, but not all. And some of them, and they're all different, right? That they all give you a different way to get where you're going, and that's important, right? Once you unlock warping, you don't even have to warp directly to Blighttown if you don't want to. In fact, you can't, because the warp system is stupid. But you can warp down to where Quelaag's sister is in the next area and then climb up. Or you could warp over to Firelink Shrine and take the path down. And so even after warping is an option, you still have meaningful choices to make in how you navigate the world, because they artificially limited where you can warp. Which maybe that was the point, but the places they choose to limit you to are so arbitrary and not helpful. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And the fact that you can do that, gives this game just an incredible sense of openness. Like, you can go anywhere and do anything if you know your way around well enough. 99% of the time when I start up a new game, the first thing I do is go get the Grasscrest shield and then, explore the forest a little bit. Sometimes I go directly to open up the shortcut back to Firelink from the parish. Sometimes I try... sometimes I climb the tower from Havel's to go right up to the Undead Burg. Oh, actually, technically, you could do that if you wanted to. In my previous example, from the Burg, you could run, or from the parish, you could run through the Burg, take that tower down to the forest, and then go into the Valley of Drakes and then into Blighttown. So there's one extra route I didn't even think about because it's weird and longer, but yeah, you could. And the fact that it just keeps on going like that is awesome. The fact that there are so many different ways to get around, uh, you know, it really highlights the amount of effort that put into the design of this world, and it really makes it fun to go back through it over and over again. And like I said, the combat system itself is so good that it can just, function as its own game if you wanted to. Like, you could literally just make all of the bosses one after another have this same control scheme with, like, one super powered weapon of each weapon type to toggle through. And that's it, you know? And the players would just, just boss rush with, default weapons and gear, and it would still be a very fun game because the combat is that compelling and the enemy design is that good. And having that at your disposal on top of incredible world design and incredible enemy placement for the most part, it really, it's really incredible because now not only do you have a engaging moment-to-moment gameplay loop, but you also have to consider where you are in the world, where you're trying to go, and what stands in your way, right? And you have to strategize what's the best way to get past this sequence of enemy placement. What do I do to do that? And it's great. It's really, really great. And I just wish that there were more games that could make me feel as compelled as this game does, because it's really good. So yeah, that's a little bit of why I love Dark Souls. And leave some comments down below talking about how you feel about this game. What games have gripped you like this? What is your go-to I can't stop playing it game? And I'll see you in the next life. Thanks for watching. Laters. Okay, end card time. I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, subscribe, all that stupid YouTube shit. There's a bell thingy, whatever. I have all the social media stuff: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Mostly I use Facebook and Twitter to tell you about my Twitch and YouTube uploads. I've got a Patreon, but Patreon is one of those things where people who can afford to throw away money give money to people who can't. And so if you can't afford to throw away money, then you shouldn't be doing that. And if you can afford to throw away money, consider charities. There's a pandemic, there's global warming, there's millions of people in the world who don't have toilets, which is just awful. So I've linked a few charities in the description down below in case you're interested in that. And if you can't donate money to a charity, consider donating some of your time, because that's also very useful. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.